Hi, you're listening to Unshackled, Born into Silence. There are stories that live in silence, stories buried beneath hymns, behind closed doors, inside the hearts of those who were never allowed to speak. I was raised in a world where obedience was survival, questioning was rebellion, where music was both forbidden and sacred. At 17, I was excommunicated, cast out, not just from a church, but from my family, my community, my entire identity. This is my story, not to shame, not to destroy, but to reclaim. For anyone who's ever been silenced, shunned, or told they were too much, this is for you. My name is Kevin, and this is Unshackled. Hi friends and neighbors, thanks for stopping by. This is episode 6 of Unshackled. It's called Running, Returning, and the Weight of Survival.
Take me back to that time when you were dealing with the court charges. What was going on in your life personally?
Honestly, it was a very chaotic time. While I was going through the court process, I ended up reconnecting with the girl from southern Alberta. And we had history, and even though, everything felt like it was falling apart around me, I decided to give it another try. We got back together just a couple weeks before she gave birth. The other guy wasn't in the picture anymore, so it felt like maybe things were lining up for us again.
At one point, you had the chance to leave everything behind. What were the options that you were weighing?
Well, I remember my oldest brother was living in Mexico at the time and offered to fly me down so I could get away from everything. He knew how bad it was getting, all my social media posts and the amount of depression I was in. So I had two choices, Mexico or Alberta. The day after court, without really understanding how any of the legal stuff worked, I chose Alberta. I talked to a lawyer and he told me not to, but I really didn't care at that point. I didn't have proper legal advice, so my court date just got pushed back a month. And when I got back to Alberta, I tried to reach a lawyer, but only managed to leave a voicemail. And I guess he ended up passing that information on to a probation officer, and that officer eventually tracked me down through a friend. And he told me if I didn't contact him soon, there'd be a warrant for my arrest for not showing up to court. And I didn't want that, so I contacted him quickly. And he ended up actually being really kind and helped me through everything, which was really great.
What ended up being the consequences from the court side of things?
I ended up having to do 24 hours of community service, a lot of scraping, mopping, waxing floors at the community hall and curling rink in town. Because I'd only left Manitoba for a short time, everything kind of lined up and my probation wasn't affected. I also had to apologize to the church leaders and pay for the broken window. In the end, I didn't get a criminal record, which I'm really grateful for.
Once you were in Alberta, what did life look like for you? And how did things change when you got the news about your dad?
Well, I moved into my girlfriend's aunt's basement because her parents wouldn't let us live together unless we were married. Their Mennonite beliefs were still pretty strong, and I ended up getting a job harvesting peas, running some big machinery in the fields with a bunch of wild kids. It was quite the time. Worked there for a couple of months, and then I got a call that my dad had leukemia, cancer. It's an aggressive blood cancer. It felt like the world kind of stopped. None of us could imagine life without him around. I remember even writing a letter apologizing for everything that I'd put him through, because I really thought he was going to be gone soon. I told my girlfriend at the time that she either came back with me or we were done. Our son was only a couple months old at that time, and within days after the news, we packed up our stuff and made the 12-hour drive home. My family needed help running my dad's business, so yeah, I was filling in while he went through treatment.
How did your dad's diagnosis affect him and the rest of your family?
My dad changed instantly. He went from being quick-tempered to completely calm and at peace. He made it clear he was okay with whatever happened. You could feel the energy from him. It was pretty wild to witness. Meanwhile, the rest of us were all falling apart. My dad was definitely the glue of the family, and without him holding everything together, the tension between brothers especially just exploded. They fought over everything, like beliefs, parenting, who was in charge. I mean, yeah, I just started drinking again to cope.
What was it like working with your family during that time?
Definitely, it was rough. My second oldest brother took over the business, and no matter what I did, it felt like I was always doing something wrong. There was constant arguing. My mom handled everything surprisingly well. She stayed in the city with Dad, though, most of the time while he went through the chemo for about 6 months. And when Dad finally got out of the hospital, he showed up at work, like, I don't know, I think it was in the middle of the winter. He was so frail, but seeing him just walking and out of the hospital alive was pretty miraculous, I think, and especially given that the doctors had only given him a couple months to live. We were pretty shocked and relieved to see him out and about. And then after about half a year of working with my brothers, I just couldn't take it anymore. Too much friction. That's when we moved to a place called Seddon's Corner. And I got a job with a logging company. Also, at that time, started playing music again at home a lot, just jamming in my bedroom. It definitely became my escape.
What was happening in your relationship and family life during this period?
Well, a month or two after moving, we found out that we were expecting another baby. We were living in a tiny house trailer and only stayed there about 6 months before moving again. We started attending a mega church at that time, met some friends there, ended up even living with them for a while. They helped us out a lot. He got me a job in the city, and then eventually our first biological son was born. And going from, one child to too was a huge adjustment. Yeah, I'll never forget. It was just chaos. And then, especially sharing a small house with another couple. And then we got married when he was 2.5 months old. I didn't want to. I never really wanted to get married. But the church pressured us. And according to them, living together with kids outside of marriage meant we were living in sin. So that was a no-go. And then she started also struggling with postpartum depression after the second child. I became both the provider and pretty much primary caretaker. Communication skills between us were non-existent. We both grew up Mennonite, and there was no way of actually talking about real things that mattered. And I still hadn't processed anything I'd been through anyway, so.
When did things start to unravel between you two?
Well, not long after our son was born, we started going out partying more, drinking pretty heavy, hanging around questionable people. She started gambling, being unfaithful, lying about where she was going and who she was with, and all while I was home taking care of the kids. So naturally, resentment built pretty fast. I thought about leaving, but I had absolutely nowhere to go. I had no friends, no community, nobody. So, and the way I was raised in the Mennonite community, divorce wasn't an option. Once you had a family, you stayed no matter what. And so I was suppressing everything with alcohol and weed. My goal every day was just to get through work so I could go home and drink. I felt betrayed, stuck, and convinced that this was just the normal, even though I knew it wasn't. Like, it could not be normal. But my solution was to move every 6 months from there, hoping a new place would fix everything.
Kevin's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest chapters are the ones that shape us the most. From family tension to personal battles, from feeling trapped to trying to rebuild, these moments don't define us, but they do refine us. Kevin, thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability today. And to everyone watching, if you connected with this story, share it with someone who might need to hear it. This is Unshackled. Until next time.